Hi, good morning all. I'm Jan van Kasteren with Flexport, the General Manager for Europe. Thanks for the introduction. And Flexport in the media typically gets called the unsexiest trillion-dollar startup. It's dull. And I can't promise it to make it more sexy, then Flexport should have sent somebody else. But what we'll do, I will show you a little bit of innovative new supply chain models which are actually enabled by structuring data in a smarter way. Before that, I would actually like to give you a little bit of an introduction into Flexport. So, Flexport is a young company. We were founded 3 years ago, literally by 2 guys and a dog in San Francisco. I mean, nowadays, we're at 5 places around the world, having a bit of over 200 people, and we serve over 1,000 clients. We're founded on the idea and the belief that the customer experience in freight forwarding is broken. And it's broken because of 2 reasons. I mean, traditional companies, the incumbents, they're very low on tech. They have ancient systems, typically dispersed, old mainframes, so they're very bad at getting information to their customers, actually also giving it to themselves. Because of this dispersed information, they're also super bad at customer service. It's really poor. And it's not because of bad intentions, it's much more because they don't have the information to share with their customers and to optimize their operations. So Flexport, we fix it in 2 ways. On the technology side, we have an in-house developed tech platform, a web platform, which gives our customers real-time access to information about their shipments. It also works internally as an operational system. Also on the organization side, we did something different. What we did, we tilted our organization to be consumer, customer focused. Now, for a lot of the brands here in the room and a lot of the retailers, that sounds absolutely normal, but for freight forwarders, that's something completely revolutionary. Because freight forwarders are typically organized in functional silos, which means like it's sales, it's operations inbound, operations outbound, etc., etc. It's optimized for internal efficiency rather than for customer experience. So these 2 things, the technology and our customer focus, they resonate extremely well with our customers. I think the thing I'm personally most proud of is our customer satisfaction. We measure the Net Promoter Score, NPS, and we average about 70, plus 70. Now, to give some context, NPS goes from minus 100, the worst, to plus 100, the best. Great companies sit at plus 50. The freight forwarding industry on average sits at minus 30, to give you a bit of context. Well, with this customer satisfaction, like I said, we've been able to serve over 1,000 customers. We've raised 94 million in funding, from people from Peter Thiel. And more importantly, we've grown revenue 25% month over month for the last 24 months. Now, admittedly, we started very small, right? So it's easy to compound, but after 24 months of 25% growth, it starts to add up. And when we talk to our customers, we typically hear the 3 same things, and it's for all kinds of customers, both small Amazon shippers as reasonably big, mid-sized companies. The first thing they keep telling us is that consumers have increasingly high demands on retailers and brands. They want the omnichannel experience, blending online and offline sales seamlessly. They want to have real-time tracking where their goods are, and not just like for same-day delivery, but also for deferred. Like you won't get away anymore with telling your customer it will be delivered in 6 to 12 weeks. Product cycles keep accelerating, which means like new launches every week. And all these things, they put a serious strain on supply chains. And what we see are retailers, they need to make continuous trade-offs for which they need better information. And these trade-offs include questions like, where do I allocate my inventory? Do I allocate it to my stores? Do I allocate it to e-commerce fulfillment centers? How do I balance optimizing my working capital against the risk of stocking out? How am I able to keep up with those quicker product cycles and ship smaller batches without incurring the additional cost? And most importantly, how do I keep all my stakeholders informed? How do I make sure that my internal stakeholders, sales, but also external stakeholders, like customers, get informed timely and correctly? And the big challenge in this all is that you would expect an abundance of data and information. I mean, the reality is that supply chains live in emails, they live in Excel files, they live in phone calls, PDFs. There's no central repository of data. You would expect it to exist, it doesn't. It's only dispersed data. And this makes it extremely hard for our customers, our prospective customers, to make the right decisions about supply chains. So this is exactly where Flexport comes in. What we aim to do is to fill this gap in data, next to physically shipping goods, fill this gap in data, and by that, empowering our clients to make better supply chain decisions. So we do it around 3 axes. The first thing we do, we provide our customers with end-to-end shipment visibility, which means from a purchase order in the beginning all the way down to delivery at the end destination, our customers can track where the goods are. And like you, like retailers, like brands, like consumers, we don't think in containers. We love to think in SKUs and products. A container is nothing more than a temporary wrapping around a product. What in the end matters are your SKUs. So you can actually have the opportunity to track your SKU at an individual level. And what we do, all the data we structure, data about financials, data about tracking, data about milestones, we structure it and give it back to your consumers. And actually it allows them to make better decisions about supply chains. You can think about topics like landed cost analytics in real time. You can think about understanding lead times on SKUs, so you know when to order and whether to fly it in or bring it in via ocean. Or topics like supplier performance benchmarking. I mean, the beauty of all the structured data is that you're able to do more with it than just a traditional setup, right? If you have all this data, if you make a digital representation of the physical world, you're actually able to think how to optimize this physical world and how to explore new modern supply chain setups. So what I would like to do with you, I would like to run you through 3 of those setups and understand a little bit how structured data allows you to serve your customers better. So the first one we call distribution center bypass. This is actually something which is live with a few of our customers at the moment. We're running it. If you look at a traditional supply chain, this starts somewhere in Asia typically with a factory manufacturing your goods. It's being put in a container is being trucked to the port where it's being put on a ship. Then it's being it lands here in Felixstowe, it's being trucked to a warehouse, a distribution center. And from there you stock your stores, you stock your retailers, you stock your other distributors. It's a very traditional supply chain model. Now for a moment, if you've structured all the data and you know exactly which SKUs are in a container, and you know exactly when this container will arrive in port, all of a sudden you can move to a world where you might actually bypass your distribution center. Because in the end, your container is your floating, moving storage. And all the information you have is actually the information about your warehouse and about which goods are in the container. So rather than trucking it to a distribution center and from there sending it to retailers or stores, you send it out of the container directly to stores, using your container as storage. By doing so, the benefits are obvious. I mean, you immediately cut, I would say, 10 days in working capital. What you do as well, you might be able to get your hot items, like items at the risk of stocking out, to stores much, much faster, because you, again, skip the distribution center. You have one set of handling less, so less cost, and you might even in time be able to scale down distribution centers. I mean, again, structured data, so really understanding which SKUs are in which container and when exactly they will arrive, is at the fundament of this. If you run it via emails or Excels, you won't be able to do it. If you look a little bit more at a direct-to-consumer fulfillment setup, an e-commerce setup, there is something we call direct fulfillment out of origin. So again, the status quo, the traditional setup of a supply chain is that you manufacture, again in Asia, you move it to your warehouse here in continental Europe or in the US. From there, a customer orders, you pick and pack, and you fulfill it to your consumers. Again, this is like a lot of working capital and inventory lying around in your fulfillment center. So bear with me. Think about a setup where you remove your fulfillment center close to your consumer and actually move it all the way back to origin. So you have a setup when a customer orders a product, it gets picked and packed in Asia, together with thousands of other orders. Those orders are all consolidated into regular freight. They're being flown to the end markets, where they're being deconsolidated and being put into last mile networks. So what you're doing, you're flying express packages, like individual customer orders, but you fly them as normal freight against normal freight prices. So by doing so, again, the benefits are tremendous. You reduce working capital, because rather than having like fulfillment centers all around the world, you only have one at origin. You'll be able to get express level service levels, 3 days from order to door at regular freight prices. And even more so, you actually get fulfillment centers in lower cost countries. I mean, there's a few companies employing this already, and you can see like them fulfilling orders against very low prices with very high service levels. The third topic I would like to talk about is a little bit less about how you structure a supply chain, but it's much more about processes and planning. So in a supply chain, you typically have a supply side and a demand side. And the supply side lives on a different rhythm than the demand side. Because if you order with a factory, it takes about 3 months to get something produced. You add an additional 1 or 2 months to get the logistics in. So you have like a 5-month window where your supply is being set. Demand runs on much, much shorter cycles. Typically, to get stuff sold, it's about a month, a 30-day cycle, which inevitably leads to mismatches between supply and demand. I mean, those mismatches are costly because it's working capital being stuck up. You need to move goods around between warehouses. So ideally, you would like to get as much of an iterative process as possible to apply to balance supply and demand. If your supply chain only lives, again, in Excels and emails, it's very hard to do this iterative process. It will cost a lot of manpower, it will cost a lot of pulling up data all the time. But as soon as you have all your data in a structured manner in a database, you'll be able to instantly see all the supply that's coming your way, all the individual SKUs, you know exactly when they will land, if there's any exceptions, etc. So all of a sudden, all the stock that lives on the water, you can actually treat it as floating stock. It's inventory which is just not available yet, which allows you to make a much more iterative demand-supply allocation process. I mean, you can make much firmer commitments to your buyers because you can tell them, I know exactly when it will arrive and I can deliver it to you. It will allow you to dynamically reroute goods from one port to the other if there's supply and demand mismatches. And in the end, you'll be able to run a much tighter S&OP process. Again, benefits obvious, like less cost, lower working capital. I've spoken quite a bit in these 3 models, right? The words that keep coming back are structured data, structured data, structured data. And structured data is the driving force behind all these models. I think the sad reality is that in a lot of companies, and it's not just the small Amazon shippers, it's also the bigger mid-market kind of companies, this structured data is not available. It still lives in emails, it lives in Excels, it lives in phone calls, etc. And there's huge untapped potential if you can unlock this data, put it all together, and make it accessible to the people in your company. We at Flexport, we fundamentally believe that there's value in this data, and that actually if we allow our customers to use the data, we actually empower them to make better decisions about the supply chain and get a competitive advantage out of it. It's end-to-end visibility, it's SKU level driving down, and actually giving back the structured data. Our customers, in the end, they'll be able to do better and more efficient inventory planning, they reduce working capital, and in the end, you have much better and faster communication with all stakeholders, both internally and externally. I mean, ultimately, what it comes down to, if we serve our customers well and give them better information, they will be able to serve their customers better as well and get, I would say, better and higher NPS. And for us, that's what it's all about, serving those customers better. Thank you.